All right, going to give a minute for the stream to breathe, make sure everything's up and running on all these different platforms we stream on. Looks like it's all good to go. And welcome, everyone. Thank you for tuning into Dove Valley Deep Divers. My name's Erick Trickel, and I know normally I don't start off the show, but tonight we're flipping it up a little bit. We're switching it up. I'm kind of going to start hosting it just for tonight. And Lance, my co-host partner and wonderful friend, he's going to take over kind of the expert role. We're going to be talking about training camp a little bit, give some quick takes about that, and then we're going to get around to talking about coverages, which is something that I struggle with. I know we've talked about it multiple times on the podcast, but Lance knows a little bit more about that, and so he's going to take that. But before we get to that stuff, I just want to say hey to everybody that's here. Hey, Charlie, Robert, ZW Designs, Terry, CC, of course, Buona Beast is with us. Terry Randall, Big E, Cody Potter, thank you all for joining us. We're happy you guys can make it tonight on this hopefully wonderful Friday night for you. But as I said, Lance is joining me as always. Lance, how's it going, man?
You know, it's not going too bad around here. Obviously, the wee baby Kaven has taken up a whole bunch of my time, especially over the last week and a half, 2 weeks or so, trying to get everything situated with that. But other than that, everything is going pretty good. It's very hot here. We don't typically talk about the weather. Very hot, very dry. Actually, today it's been more noticeable than the last few days. There's a lot of fires going on around the state of Wyoming, not in the state of Wyoming, but around the state itself. There was a big fire just north of Fort Collins, in between Fort Collins and Cheyenne, and it was right on I-25. And there was a pretty interesting Facebook post the other day saying that there was driving on the highway to hell because the flames were literally right up against the interstate. So it's just been really rough. The smoke over the last couple of days has been pretty unbearable, and especially today, it was very hazy and very hard to kind of breathe for the most part. But other than that, we're doing really good up here in central Wyoming. I'm excited to be back on the podcast with you, my good friend and colleague. He's the Denver Broncos insider and Mile High Huddle senior NFL draft analyst, the one and only Erick Trickel. But no, for real, it's been an interesting week around here. Just been really tired trying to take care of the baby and everything like that. But it's going back to work. I had last week off, so I got a lot of stuff done. Still working on ranking the AFC West stuff. I've got the edge defenders coming out probably tomorrow. I've got the interior defensive line cornerbacks as well, which we're going to get into that a little bit later here in the show with our takeaways. But Erick, how you been, man?
I've been pretty good. I mean, you were talking about the heat. I know everybody in the chat's going to laugh about this a little bit. But, Alaska, the last few days, we've been up in the mid-high 70s, which is extremely hot for us up here. And a lot of people don't realize this, but Alaska, we don't have air conditioners in our homes. So we can't just go turn off. We have to rely on opening windows. But, it's made it really hot up here. Thankfully, not in my area. We don't have any forest fires going on. I have family down in Grand Junction, Colorado, and there's a bad fire going on near them. And last year, actually, we had a really bad fire near Ski Lake, which is a lake up here. You guys can look it up and everything. And it burned for a while. I mean, we made news all over the world about it. And we drove by there. It was devastating. I hate seeing the aftermath. It almost made me cry, honestly. Other than that, doing good. Family's doing wonderful, man. Just there's some other stuff going on, but not something that we can actually really talk about on the podcast. But yeah, I'm just happy to be here. Always, every single week, I'm happy to see all the regulars show up every single week, and happy to see even the new faces show up. And speaking of regulars, we have Terry Randall coming in saying with a $2 donation saying hashtag Erick's new setup rocks. Thanks for that. I basically just turned my desk out from my window, which my window is right there, which is where my desk was, and just decided to kind of turn it halfway. It's sitting in the middle of the room a little bit, and just enjoying it. Surprisingly, leaves me a lot more room in my office. But yeah, glad you guys all can like it. I figured the Funko Pops, they're still being there, and then my Lego collection, and all that. It's all wonderful and everything.
Nerd.
And, hey, man, I'm a big nerd. Speaking of being a nerd, James Campbell saying, nice Pokemon that you caught, Erick. Yeah, I'm very proud of that, man. I caught a perfect ID shiny Genesect the other day. Very happy about that. But
Pokemon, you guys don't represent.
But you guys don't showing up to talk about football. You guys don't talk about showing up to talk about my office or anything like that. you guys join up to talk about the one thing that we're all fans of, the Denver Broncos. And training camp's underway. Training camp started last week, and it was awesome that we got to be the first night of actual training camp.
Yeah.
That was such an awesome feeling. Typically, all the news and stuff happens when, before or after we're on. So it was nice that we got to kind of break that down a little bit, and I'm excited to get down to tonight. We're going to give you guys, as I said, we're going to give you guys a few takeaways here, and then we're going to get into coverages. And first off, I'm going to start us off here, and I'm going to be looking at the running backs first off. I mean, Melvin Gordon, he's dealing with that rib injury. I don't think that'll have a lingering effect on him. We really shouldn't hope it has a lingering effect on him. So going to be interesting to see how that goes on going forward. He's a guy who has multiple medical concerns over his career so far. And then Philip Lindsay, he's showing up in the receiving game, which is good to see. Hopefully that can carry over into games, because not being a receiving back was the one big issue that Denver had with him last year. It's why they went and got Melvin Gordon. I mean, blocking obviously had played a part in it too, but they just didn't have a viable receiving threat who could also be a runner. I mean, Royce Freeman, he was a receiving threat, but there was no concern of a run from him, because that's not what Freeman can do well. And speaking of Freeman, everything I've heard is that he's not been doing so well. He's had a few bright moments, but a lot of struggles. And then Levante Bellamy's been very up and down. And then last one, Jeremy Cox, he's my guy. I'm a big fan of Jeremy Cox. I went and broke him down before I did my player profile, watching over his tape and everything. And I'm super hopeful for him. And it was actually kind of interesting to see, because he got some first team reps this week, and he's actually been seeing action as the first team fullback as well. He's had a couple big runs. He's had a couple big receptions. He's got good size, good speed. I mean, he can really do a little bit of everything and be that true 3-down back. I mean, obviously as a depth piece, not a starter, guys. I'm not saying that, but he can be that depth piece. What's one of your takeaways there, Lance?
Well, I just want to kind of bounce off of that really fast and just speak to Levante Bellamy coming in and actually getting some first team run as well with Jeremy Cox. Had a touchdown run earlier today, is doing a very good job out of the backfield. He had that frustrating drop on day one, had a fumble on the first padded day as well, but he has actually flashed a lot. And Benjamin Albright from Broncos Country Tonight on 850 KOA has actually spoken very highly of what Levante Bellamy has actually brought to the offense. And earlier this week, he kind of really pointed towards Royce Freeman not being able to make this roster, because Levante Bellamy is doing everything that Royce Freeman is able to do, except for in the pass protection schemes. Not quite holding up well right now, but with him as a receiver out of the backfield, that was a big question I know that you had about him. It was one that I had about him as well. But to see the improvement from him also with Philip Lindsay as well, there's going to be a trio of guys that can come out of the backfield and also offer some stuff in between the tackles, where Levante Bellamy has showed great burst getting through the hole and again, just showing capable enough of being that third running back. Now, the other one that I kind of want to bring in here is, as I lost Erick here, my third biggest takeaway of Broncos training camp right now is the 3-man rotation that we have going on at the center position. Austin Slotman seems to be the guy that has had the most success at the center position over the last few days at practice, especially early in camp. Got a whole lot of run with the first team, and him and Patrick Morris seem to split reps early in camp. But Patrick Morris has kind of fallen off of a cliff here lately. He got a couple of days over the past couple of days as the first team center. But the biggest takeaway for me here is the fact that the Broncos are really kind of easing Lloyd Cushenberry into the center position, letting him learn the offense, letting him learn the checks and communication and stuff like that. They're leaning on these veterans. And even though Patrick Morris has been exploited multiple times in the passing game, specifically on stunts and twists with the defensive lineman, he actually allowed a big sack earlier today. I believe Jarrell Casey got the best of him. He also had another one in the red zone period, allowed Drew Lock to get sacked. So it's kind of interesting to see the way that this is shaking out. And Austin Slotman being the guy that is shown to be the best starting center for this Broncos 5-man offensive line. It's kind of the most eye-opening thing to me as far as the offensive line is concerned, other than the struggles that Elijah Wilkinson has had at tackle. Will kind of give him the benefit of the doubt because he is recovering from that ankle surgery earlier this offseason.
And he also just re-hurt that ankle too.
Yeah, he did. He just tweaked that ankle earlier today. Vic Fangio said he doesn't think it's going to be a very big deal in his presser earlier today, but he did tweak his ankle again. But still, Austin Slotman coming in and really kind of taking control of that center position is at least the third biggest takeaway for me for Broncos camp.
Yeah, I think with Lloyd Cushenberry and everything, we're seeing the Broncos do something that we haven't really seen them do before. I mean, even last year, it wasn't really the case with their rookie class. They're making the rookies work for it. Jerry Jeudy started on the second team, and he's finally gotten first team reps where he was able to beat some of those first team corners, which was a concern I had last week. I mean, beating up on those second, third team corners, okay, yeah. But I mean, that's what he should be doing. But watching him being able to get separation from AJ Boye or Bryce Callahan, that's great to see. I mean, KJ Hamler, he's having to work for it. Michael Ojemudia is having to work for it. All the rookies, they're having to work for their position on it. And that's something that I think is awesome. I think that's what all teams should do. You can't just hand these guys the position. They've got to go out there and they've got to earn it. We have another donation from It's Lars with, I think I saw Swiss francs. I'm sorry, I'm terrible with pronunciation of things. I don't know why. But he says, if Todd Davis misses the first few weeks of the regular season, would you support the idea of signing Vontaze Burfict, or would you prefer Jewell or Strnad stepping in for Davis? I'm not a big fan of Vontaze personally. I think that his issues on the field with his attitude and everything is just a big no-no to even bring in. And I think that he and Vic Fangio would do nothing but clash and cause more issues. I like Josie Jewell. I think he can do well in a situational role as that starter while Davis comes back. But if I remember right, they're not expecting him to really miss much time of the regular season, if any. I can't remember exactly the length that they gave, but I know it's not as severe as the calf injury he had last year. So that is some really good news.
The one thing I think actually Vic Fangio spoke on that today is Todd Davis is expected to miss about a week with a calf strain, so it's not nearly as big of an injury as what was originally feared. I mean, seeing him get caught off the field, and after watching last year, that bad calf tear that he had and missed the first couple of games, doesn't sound like that's going to be the thing. Really kind of being precautionary with him. The biggest thing with Josie Jewell to me is that the lack of athleticism that everybody noted when he was coming out of Iowa has really reared its head in the NFL level. He's just not capable of playing very well in a man coverage. He can play in some zones, but he doesn't have fluid enough hips to kind of turn and run with guys. So you're really not going to see him in a starting capacity as far as like you might see him on like first and second down, obvious running situations. Ryan Edwards actually had a really good point on Broncos Country tonight earlier. I think it was last night. Where he said that Josie Jewell coming in might actually be a guy that could step in and play on first down as a run defender. But when you want him in a pass situation, you're going to try to pull him off the field and get a Justin Strnad, maybe another safety. Yeah. Trey Marshall might be a guy. Bring another cornerback. Isaac Yiadom might be a guy there as well. But with Jewell, the thing is he's so cognizant and he understands the coverage schemes and he does so well. He just doesn't have the athleticism. And Justin Strnad has been slowly worked in, and he actually had what seemed like a pretty decent day today from everything that I could hear. Really struggled with tight ends across the middle of the field. But this defense, once again, guys, this defense is very complex. I'm going to break it down for you guys here in just a few minutes. But to get into my second biggest takeaway is, again, on the defensive side of the football, with Von Miller missing time. He has a nicked up elbow. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a big issue for him moving forward. And they're just holding out for precautionary reasons. Obviously, I mean, Von Miller doesn't need to practice. He's one of the best, if not the best edge defender in the entire NFL. But still, with him missing practice, it's given an opportunity here for Jeremiah Tauchu and especially Malik Reed, a guy that has paired together a handful of very good practices, especially today, rushing against Elijah Wilkinson, had a big sack, had another handful of pressures, is doing a lot better in the running game, which is a surprise to me. I didn't think his size was going to be able to hold up. It seems like he's bulked up. It seems like the game is slowed down for him like in a massive, massive way. And also, he's more confident in his first step. He's not really waiting to react on his first step. He's attacking. So that's a big thing with Malik Reed was he was very hesitant to kind of go and attack the quarterback because he didn't understand what his role in the defense was. Now the game is slowed down for him. He's really kind of starting to understand what's going on around him. And he understands that I'm in a pass rush role. I have outside contain in the running aspect, but I'm in a pass rush role here. I know what I have to do, and I'm going to get after the quarterback. And he's actually doing a very good job, not only against Malik Reed, but from what I understand, against the second teamers as well, and also against Garrett Bowles on the left side. So he's flipping sides of the field and working some stuff, getting pass pressures, working really well in the running game, had a couple of tackles for loss in this, we're playing in pads, but we're not taking guys to the ground. But he had a couple of tackles for loss in the running game too. So Malik Reed really showing up.
Yeah, and I mean, it's nice to see it. Malik Reed was one guy that he definitely needed to show development. Otherwise, he was going to be cut. I mean, there's no other way to put that. He had to show a lot of development because after the first few weeks, when he really got into that starting job after Bradley Chubb went down, he just plateaued and really fell off a cliff eventually. But I did kind of hint on my number 2 takeaway a little bit with Jerry Jeudy going against the ones, but it was more so all the rookie wide receivers.
Yeah.
KJ Hamler, he's had a couple drops, but he's had some big plays, and that's what we're going to get with him. It's going to be a roller coaster ride with him, guys. He's got his hands are questionable. They always have been. It's not just an issue of focus drops. It's just an issue, period. So that's something that, again, roller coaster ride with him. But Tyree Cleveland, he's a guy that I got a lot of flack for when we made our 53-man roster, because I talked about having him on there over Deontay Spencer because of what he could do as on the return team and being able to call up Deontay Spencer and just the versatility that you have with Tyree Cleveland. And he's showing up. I mean, he's not making these huge splash plays, but he's been consistent. He's consistently getting open. He's consistently catching the ball. He's consistently making good, solid plays. He's being reliable, which that is one of the biggest things that you just got to have. We have a couple super chats here real quick before we get to our third takeaway. Cody Potter comes in with a $5 donation. Thank you, Cody, for that. It seems like Sutton and Jeudy have been killing it so far, but with this happening, they've been torching the cornerbacks. Are you concerned? Not really, because it's actually been a lot of give and take there. The cornerbacks, they've won a lot of their matchups too. I know, spoiler, sorry, Lance, but Lance is going to talk about that a little bit more here in a minute because that kind of touches into his third takeaway from camp so far. So I'm not concerned about it at all because it really has been. It's been a battle back and forth. And then I got to find it here.
Well, let me just take this away really fast. Jerry Jeudy has been completely as advertised. The fact that he came out as probably one of the most well-polished route runners out of the NFL draft we've seen in the last decade, if not even longer than that. He has come in and has not only done it, as we talked about last week on Dub Valley Deep Divers, the fact that he was running against 2s and 3s and the depth cornerbacks and stuff like that. It's not only that he's running against 2s and 3s. He's got his run in the first string, and he's still doing it not only in single man coverage or breaking zones and stuff like that. He's actually getting open against bracket coverage from the sound of it. He has a very good catch against Justin Simmons where he set him up down the field, made it look like he was going to continue his route down the field and just kept on going, geared down in less than 2 steps, put a dead leg on, turned around and caught the ball in front of Justin Simmons and then round around him for a touchdown. Like Jerry Jeudy has been as advertised, if not even better. Like there's no doubt that the Broncos have a hit here, so long as he can stay healthy. And I'm going to knock on wood as I say that. Jerry Jeudy has been amazing. Now, KJ Hamler working on some routes. There's obviously that one really cool video that he had working against Devontae Harris, where he ran that blaze out, a couple of different moves and stuff. He's looked really good. But the depth cornerbacks have looked a lot worse than the top cornerbacks. I'll break that down here in just a few minutes.
Yeah, they have. And Chase Woolner came in with a $5 donation asking, how long do you think it'll take Dotson to take over the right tackle spot? Well, Chase, first of all, thank you for the donation, man. We really appreciate
absolutely. Thanks,
that.
Chase.
And as for how long it'll take Dotson to take over, next week. I think next week is when we'll really start to see Dotson taking that step to be that starting right tackle. They've still been working him slowly as he's adapting to the playbook and everything like that. They're just kind of easing him in. But I think this next week is when we'll see him take that spot.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The biggest thing is to get him acclimated, and it's not only to the playbook and everything like that, learning the verbiage, learning in the pass protection schemes, the run schemes, and everything like that, but getting conditioned in the mile high altitude. He's been playing in Tampa Bay for the last 8 years as a starter. He's a 10-year veteran or something like that. He's got a lot of wear on the tires, and he's got to get conditioned. And playing at a mile high altitude, it's a lot more difficult. I mean, there's a lot of players that come in. I mean, what is it? Ryan Clark, I believe, with the Pittsburgh Steelers back in the early 2000s, couldn't even play in Denver due to sickle cell anemia because of the lack of oxygen. So DeMar Dotson has to get not only acclimated to the playbook and what's going on and develop some chemistry and some cohesion within the offensive scheme itself. He has to get conditioned and be able to play on, 60, 70 snaps a game at the right tackle position.
Yeah, and David came in with the $15 donation. Thank you, David. We really appreciate that. And it said, the way that Locke was able to go deep in camp and the wide receivers doing good, does that reflect the way the cornerbacks are playing or just our wide receiver unlocked that good? So this is actually the counterpoint of the last one, or not the last one, the one before it, about the the cornerbacks was about getting burned, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of goes into that. Is again, it's a lot of back and forth here. We're hearing about the good plays the receivers are doing, but the defense, they're making some huge plays. I mean, they've picked off like 10 passes already. And I know, okay, so last week I said training camp interceptions don't mean anything. They don't mean anything for the quarterback and the offense because they're getting timing down and everything. They do mean something for the defense and the cornerbacks because that means they're getting chemistry down. They're knowing their role. They're doing the right things. They're reading the quarterback correctly or the receiver correctly and making plays on the ball. So not that big of a deal for the quarterback, big deal for the corners. And they're able to make plays. So I'm not really concerned. And I mean, honestly, they're doing better than I thought they would. I thought there'd be a little bit more of an adjustment period by this point from the quarterbacks. So I'm actually a little bit surprised about how they're doing. And of course, as I said earlier, Lance is going to talk about the cornerbacks here in just a minute. Actually, while I find the next super chat, why don't you go ahead and take it away and talk about your number 3 takeaway?
Yeah. So the biggest thing that I'm seeing right now with the Broncos, especially on the defensive side of the football, is first things first, the defense is actually winning a lot of these practices. The offense has a lot of flashes. They have had a couple of days where the offense has really taken advantage of what the defense is trying to do as they are still trying to learn and gel together. But the biggest thing is the pass rush is actually getting home on a frequent basis right now, which doesn't really bode well for the offensive line. But at the same time, there's a plethora of pass rushers for this Broncos defense. But the biggest part of this is the fact that the Broncos cornerbacks, and this was something that I had actually said multiple times on Dove Valley Deep Divers, and I know Nick Kendall has said it on Building the Broncos as well, but the cornerback depth of this roster is not very good, and especially if Bryce Callahan is not playing. However, Bryce Callahan is playing, and A.J. Bouye is playing, and Isaac Yiadom and Devontae Bosby are battling out for that cornerback 3, really cornerback 2 on the boundary. But still, these guys are actually the top 4 guys on the roster are battling, and they are playing very good football. A.J. Bouye has come in and taken a grasp to this Vic Fangio scheme. He's calling checks out at the line of scrimmage. He actually has a pair of interceptions. In fact, on back-to-back days, he had interceptions. Multiple hands on the football, tip passes is what I'm seeing from out of him. Devontae Bosby has 2 interceptions at least. One of them was on where he jumped an out route by Jerry Jeudy, a bad throw by Jeff Driscoll that came behind him, but he picked it off and took it to the house for a pick 6. Justin Simmons in 7-on-7 drills has multiple interceptions of Drew Lock, including one today. Bryce Callahan has at least a pair, if not 3 interceptions, multiple hands on the football. He's knocking passes away all the time. And then another one here, just to come into a little bit of the depth of the safety, which is a big concern for me. Trey Marshall has a couple of interceptions, including one in the red zone that came off of KJ Hamler's hands, right over the middle of the field, went right through KJ Hamler's hands and fell directly into Trey Marshall's hands. Like, there are multiple interceptions, a lot of guys getting a lot of tips on the football, a lot of pass pressures. This defense is really taking a big step forward in year 2 under Vic Fangio. It's actually very impressive. You see a lot of the stuff with Drew Lock. Everybody really wants to see the flashy plays from the offense. Drew Lock taking that next step. But a bigger focus right now needs to be on this defense, which really has potential to be a top 3, not top 5, top 3 unit in the NFL this year. And if they can continue on this clip of taking the football away from the offense in the regular season, this defense could carry the Broncos to the playoffs.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on that too with Bryce Callahan and how he's looking good. Bryce Callahan's known for his lack of size and everything, and he's done very well even matched up against Cortland Sutton.
Yes, he has.
And that's worth taking note of. And your third takeaway kind of comes into here. You talked about Trey Marshall a little bit, and Lars comes in with another $2 donation. Thank you again, Lars. He says, "Who do you see securing that 4th safety job?" Well, I think Trey Marshall. He's done enough so far to really cement himself as a number 3.
Yeah,
I think that number 4 is kind of between Duke Dawson, who's competing for that kind of that nickel role a little bit, and then Douglas Coleman. And from what I've heard is neither one of them have really done enough to secure it or even get close to taking it. So it's still wide open. I think that right now I'm just going to go with the guy who has experience in that role, and that's Duke Dawson. But, I mean, there's a lot of camp left, and Douglas Coleman can turn it up at some point. But I think, too, that one issue is that Douglas Coleman is very similar to Trey Marshall. So I think that keeping two of those same types of players is a little rough. So I think that keeping a guy who's a little bit more versatile like Duke Dawson also makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I've heard some really good things about Elijah Holder as well, especially in run support. So I'm not necessarily sure as far as what the fourth cornerback or the fourth safety, is looking like. Again, like I said, Trey Marshall's getting his hands on some footballs, taking some stuff the other way, is actually showing some work in the running game as well. So that was a big question for me, was his ability to come and step up and fill the gap on the backside as far as the cutback for this cover 4 defense looks. But still, I mean, you're not going to see a lot of that. I'm hoping that we're going to see, a lot of, obviously, Justin Simmons, who doesn't really miss a lot of snaps. I'm hoping that Kareem Jackson can come back. Obviously, he was suspended to end the last 2 games of last season. So that's where you saw Trey Marshall, and he struggled last year in that Kareem Jackson role. That's not his place. He's more of a single high center fielder role, and to see him get his hands on some footballs against the numbers 2s, I think he got an interception off a lock as well. I'm not sure about that. Don't quote me on it. But still, to see him actually come in and playing at a high level, at least as a backup safety, that bodes well for this Broncos defense too.
So there's a couple comments here in the chat I want to get to, and then, of course, Super Chats. Then I'll give my third take, and then I'll let you take over for the coverages. But couple comments. Definitely, CC says definitely high on Tyree Cleveland. Coaching staff seems to be as well. I've heard a lot of positive stuff about him.
Yep.
Cleveland is on the team for sure. Hamilton may not get on. I actually think Hamilton will get on. He's been doing pretty well so far in camp as well. The one receiver to watch has been Tim Patrick. I know at one point he was being touted for being the number 2 receiver with Jerry Jeudy as a slot receiver, really. But I mean, there's been a lot of not so good from Patrick so far in camp, from what I've heard. Couple plays here and there, but just struggling to get separation. Couple drops as well, just some issues there. So definitely still to watch on. I think in the end, Hamilton and Patrick make the roster. I think Cleveland's going to be going for the practice squad. But again, there's still a lot of camp left. Let's see here. Devontae Harris has been very poor. He has been.
Yes, he has.
He's been the worst of the bunch and everything. I think that's one big reason why Asang Basi has a chance to take him over. And real quick, Lance, you talked about Isaac Yadam and Devontae Bosby. I just got to throw this out there. Michael Ojemudia, from everything I've heard, has been showing a lot of promise. He's looked really good out there, and he's definitely part of that battle for that third cornerback spot.
I want to interject really fast because from what I understand is, yes, he has looked good and he is battling for that number 3 cornerback spot, but they are still really heavily relying between Devontae Bosby and Isaac Yadam. Michael Ojemudia is playing a lot against the number 2s and especially with the number 3s. They're really kind of bringing this rookie along slowly, which is what Vic Fangio likes to do with his rookie cornerbacks. He doesn't really like to throw them into the mix. Something that I have said multiple times is I don't trust a rookie cornerback, especially in a complex scheme like what Vic Fangio runs. And it's very true right now. Well, Michael Ojemudia is playing with the 1s, but he's not getting nearly the run that Devontae Bosby and Isaac Yadam are. He's really not.
He isn't right now. I think that'll change. I've heard a lot of comments about Isaac Yadam that he's had some big plays, but he's also been getting burned quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I think that eventually he'll take that over. And quickly again, It's Lars comes in with the $2 donation saying Logan Ryan is a free agent, is saying, and he also says we have the cap space and we need depth, so why not sign him for 1 year? Logan Ryan considers himself a safety. He wasn't that good last year. He was actually rather terrible. He allowed almost 1,000 yards receiving, almost 100 catches allowed. He was just terrible, and he still wants $10 million for a year. And then as for the cap space, you kind of need that cap space to roll over to next year, because the cap is going down.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing.
Another donation from David Kilgore with the $4.99 says, "Do you guys think we'll go after anyone in free agent like cornerback or OL, or are we staying pat? Depth at cornerback could be better." I think for the most part, Denver's done. They might make a couple small signings to deal with injuries, but for the most part, I think they're done.
I think that those signings that you're going to see, they're not going to happen anytime soon. It's going to be after the wave of cuts happen. They're going to bring some guys in. It's such an interesting thing, though. And this was another thing that I heard on, I believe it was 104.3 The Fan earlier today, was the competition between Royce Freeman and Levante Bellamy. And what do you do between those two guys? Do you hold on to Royce Freeman and hold on to the commodity that you know? It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. So with Royce Freeman and Levante Bellamy, can you stash Levante Bellamy onto the practice squad? Is that a potential possibility? Now, with there not being a preseason due to the ongoing pandemic, you don't get to see any of these reps. Everything that we are glossing away from training camp is coming through tweets, radio shows, private conversations that we're having with some people that are actually in attendance, which there's not very many people. It's so hard to kind of gauge what's going on right now because even the media presence is very, very limited. I mean, DNVR, Zach Stevens, Ryan Konigsberg, Andrew Mason, who's worked for the Denver Broncos, denverbroncos.com for a long time. He's like, those guys have to rotate what days they get to go out and actually attend practice. Whereas years past, anybody that wanted to go could go, especially in the media. Like they had a full media tent, luncheon and everything. Like it was a big deal to be able to go to training camp. Now it's a big deal that you can't go to training camp because everything we're learning is through the limited media presence that is there. So it's so hard to kind of take away with this. It also translates to the other 31 teams in the NFL. Nobody really knows what's going on across the NFL landscape because there's not fans. There's no media. There's no real publication of what's going on behind these closed doors. And if you want to stash Levante Bellamy onto the practice squad, you might be able to get away with it because we're not having preseason games where he's going to go out in the first preseason game and play the entire second half. He's not going to go out in the fourth preseason game and play pretty much the entire game. Like he's behind closed doors, and what the work he's doing is literally only seen by the Broncos and a handful of media members. So it's really hard to kind of gauge of what the Broncos are going to do right now because outside free agents, they have to come in, they have to get tested. There's no chance for them to look at any of these other players that are getting cut off of other rosters. So why not stay with the guys that you've been working with for the last 3 weeks?
Yeah. And we have Cody Potter with another $5 donation saying, do you think Fangio will use Sternad like Belichick used Jamie Collins as a Mike linebacker blitzer, so to speak, while he progresses into more of an every down role? No. I think that basically Sternad's role is going to be a coverage guy. That's what he does best. He struggles a lot taking on blockers and everything. Blitzing's not a strong suit for him. I don't see that being his role whatsoever. And then Chris Hernandez comes in with the $4.99 donation, says, any players on the rise that the fans or media is sleeping on? Appreciate you guys. # click those little thumbs up. Yes, definitely. Click those thumbs up. That is one of the best ways to support the show. And along with subscribing and all that stuff too. Which I'll get to here in just a second as well, since I kind of forgot to do it earlier. Sorry, guys. Terrible at hosting. That's why I don't do it. But as for players on the rise that the fans or media is sleeping on, I think Metelvin Ajim, he's been tearing it up for them. I think even caught me by surprise with how well he's doing. I thought he could end up as good as he's been showing so far in practice. I just think it wouldn't happen this quickly. Draymond Jones is also looking really strong out there. Jeremy Cox is a guy that I've heard nothing but positives about. I've heard some good things about Asang Bossy, and Derek Tuska is another one I've heard a lot of positive stuff about.
Yeah. McTelvin Ajim and the way that the offensive line is actually talking about him has brought a big star over the top of my head. Like, holy cow, this guy's actually doing a lot. Not only in the passing game, which is we kind of expected that with his quick first step and penetration ability, but also holding up against the run, which is something that I kind of questioned. He's long and lengthy. He's got a big frame, but Nick Kendall actually brought up a very interesting point in maybe adding him, 15 to 20 pounds, getting him over the 300-pound mark. And with the quick, one gap player that he is, being able to penetrate and disrupt stuff that way. And something that I've also thought about as well is, could he add 15 to 20 pounds and play that nose tackle role, take over from Mike Purcell?
I said that draft night after we drafted him.
You told me that I was wrong for thinking that he could actually play over the
Ajim, right?
Yes, McTelvin Ajim. You told me he doesn't have the size to be able to do that.
No, yeah, he doesn't have the size right now. But on the night we drafted him, I said that he can play in a situational role right now. But if he bulks up a little bit, he can sit there and he can do that.
Yeah, I said the exact same thing. It's no, he doesn't have the size to be able to do that. Well, yeah, I know. He needs to bulk up.
Right now. Anyways, guys, Lance, I do got to say this, though, is we're already over 30 minutes. And I know that you have all the stuff done for the coverages and everything like that. Do you think that we have time to get to that, or should we just continue talking about training camp?
There's a couple things that I really want to get to. We can continue on with training camp, but there is a couple things that I really want to get to, especially breaking down what the Broncos are doing defensively in what is called a match quarters defense. I've got some slight breakdowns and stuff like that. I'd really like to get into all of it. I worked really hard on this stuff, guys. But
what I was thinking is that we can push it off to next week and just really focus on making that one, because talking about training camp and everything. It's a hot subject right now, obviously. So I kind of think that we should just kind of continue with that.
Okay, and then
push it off for next week. I hate to push it off again and everything. And but guys, since I didn't do this earlier, real quick, you guys are watching Dove Valley Deep Divers. My name's Erick Trickel. That's Lance Sanderson. You guys can follow the Dove Valley Deep Divers pod at DVDD_pod. You can also follow up Mile High Huddle at Mile High Huddle. And make sure you guys go to the huddleuppod.com to get your swag on, as Chad likes to say. You guys can go sit there and get all your merchandise, like the Dove Valley Deep Divers that my good buddy's wearing, or the Dove Valley Deep Divers t-shirts that we have going on. And I believe that we have a new shirt coming out here soon. You can also get Building the Broncos. Is Mile High Insider stuff on there yet?
Oh, yeah, they've got it on there.
They've got it on there. Now. You guys can get stuff to support Luke and Nick for Mile High Insiders. Huddle Up. All of the podcasts are represented on there. Make sure you guys go get your merch. But if you guys can't afford to do that right now, I know times are tough for a lot of people. You guys can still support the stream with a simple thing of subscribing, liking, and sharing. Every time you guys subscribe, it boosts our numbers up a little bit, and it gets us out to a wider audience. Liking does the same thing, and of course, sharing. Obviously, you guys are sharing us out there, spreading the word of us good folks here at Mile High Huddle. And just spreading it out there and bringing it to more people's attentions. And you guys can also, as I said, I'm Erick Trickel. My Twitter handle's at Erick Trickel, ERICK_TRICKEL. You guys can follow us there. And then Lance's is at Lance Sanderson.
No, at Sanderson MHH.
At Sanderson MHH. There we go. That's the guy. But we did have another. Did we? I thought we did. Nope, guess not. But yeah, we've had a couple things about here. I never did get around to my third takeaway either. So real quick, my third takeaway is talking about the tight ends a little bit, and more so Albert Okwuegbunam. And Vic Fangio made it very clear that his blocking is atrocious. That's basically what he said today. He can't block to save his life. It's something that if you watch his tape in college, you know he can't do. It's a big weakness of his, something that he has to definitely work on and develop a little bit. And we're kind of seeing how his role is going to be with practices so far. A lot of times that he's getting reps with the first team, it's been very limited reps, but it's in what would they consider short yardage situation or in the red zone. I think that's where his usage is going to be. He's going to be such a mismatch in the red zone. We're going to see his usage there. And with Nick Van Nett out, his amount of reps he's getting have gone up a little bit. And is Noah Fant out too?
He missed a day because he was sick, but he actually came out today and blew stuff up. It was actually pretty impressive to watch from what I understood.
And then, Jake Butt, he's been absolutely tearing it up. Yep. I think that he has a maybe not a great shot to make the roster, but he's helping himself every single day. Troy Fumagalli, he's been solid out there. The tight ends, they've really been looking like a strength out there. So that's something good to see, especially after dealing with it as a weakness for so many years. It's nice that these last 2 years, it's been one of the strengths when it comes to it. So, and then I see a lot of people talking about Nathaniel Muti and talking about him a little bit. He's been playing a little bit. He's been doing pretty well there. He's had some issues in pass coverage, but when it comes to run blocking, he's been killing it. That's been his big strength for it. He's a guy that, as Ben Lee says, he's definitely in play for 2021 and beyond and everything. Although the question becomes because Dalton Reisner's still under contract in 2021. Grant Glasgow's under contract for 2021. Lloyd Cushenberry's under contract for 2021. Those are your three guys that they're looking at for their guard, unless they're moving Dalton Reisner to tackle, which, by the way, self-promotion here, I have a video up on YouTube that talks about just that. It's a theory that I have, kind of a tinfoil hat theory about how Dalton Reisner's future may actually be at tackle and not guard. And Nathaniel Muti is a big reason why. After all, if you have your three interior offensive line positions and Muti cannot play tackle whatsoever, I talked about this before. When it comes to arm length, he'd be in the 0 percentile for offensive tackles. He's got he's got very chubby arms. They're only like 30 inches long, which is definitely a no-no. Teams like to have over 34. 33 is the minimum. Big issue there. As well as he just doesn't have the normal height and build for a tackle position in the NFL. So if you have your 3 interior offensive lineman guys kind of figured out and everything, why would you go draft a guy, highly thought of interior offensive lineman, that just has issues staying healthy if you're not planning on making a change to your offensive line? Now, that change could be after maybe a year or two, getting rid of Graham Glasgow, trading Graham Glasgow, just cutting him, whatever. Or, I mean, insurance, obviously, that could be a big reason for it. But they have plans for Nathaniel Moody. They want to get him out there on the field. They've said that. So the easiest one, you have this guy there at left guard who's played tackle in college, played right tackle. They haven't done anything to help the future of the position. Well, maybe it is at right tackle or left tackle even. Make sure you guys go check out that video, even though I just kind of spoiled everything I said in it.
My biggest takeaway on that one here, Eric, is the fact that not only do you have Nathaniel Moody that's coming in and he's going to be a 2021 guy to fill in at that left guard role, and also Dalton Risner, who's played very well at right tackle specifically, but he has played at tackle. But Garrett Bowles just got his 5th-year option declined. Is it possible that the Broncos are going to slide Dalton Risner out to that left tackle position, insert Nathaniel Moody into the left guard, and have an absolute brutal mauler left side of the offensive line?
So it's funny you mentioned that. This video project actually started off as Dalton Risner being the future at left tackle. And in the video, I still kind of touch up on that a little bit because, as I've stated on the podcast before, it's often offensive linemen, former offensive linemen have said multiple times that moving from right to left or left to right is a lot harder than moving from guard to tackle. Well, Dalton Risner was a right tackle. They wanted to get him out on the field. They wanted to get him experience. So why not put him in that left guard, let him pick up the technique for playing that left side, and then move him out to left tackle? I mean, that way, when that time comes for them to move him to left tackle, he's not just having to make that transition on its own. He already has the experience down with working the left side. He has tackle technique down. So maybe that is, I mean, the question becomes, why wouldn't they just move James? But maybe a question of James isn't comfortable there. Again, guys, make sure you guys go check out that video. Take Peter's word for it. He saw that video today. He said it's a nice video. Take his word for it.
Peter, what's up in Turkey? I've got a question here that I'm going to grab and kind of take over just a little bit here from a Facebook user. And Facebook user, I apologize. You're going to see your question here and know exactly who you are. Make sure you set up your settings so that you are allowed to share who you are. Because if you don't, then it comes up as Facebook user. We don't actually get to highlight your name, but I'm going to read your question here. Seeing Peyton Manning mentoring Drew Lock is amazing. What former player besides DeMarcus Ware would you like to see mentoring our current defensive guys? Thanks, guys. And there's only one that comes to mind immediately, and that would be at the cornerback position because Champ Bailey is destined to be a great defensive backs coach. And I want to see what he can do in this match quarters defense, coaching up guys like A.J. Bouye, coaching up guys like Michael Ojemudia, who's a great tackler, Champ Bailey being able to click and close, cover guys, be in their hips, take the football away, and also one of the best tackling defensive backs that we've seen ever. Like, seriously, Champ Bailey was so amazing as a tackler in the running game. Michael Ojemudia, I'm not going to compare him to that, but he has those same kind of skill sets. He can play and drive on the football. He can play, he knows that he can't get beat deep. He's a very sound tackler out on the edges. If you could get Champ Bailey in Michael Ojemudia's ear and let him just whisper sweet nothings and stuff like that and just try to coach him up, that would be the one guy defensively that I want to see come in and step and take a coaching role as a former player and help coach up this Broncos defense.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of different people. Obviously, when I heard that question, obviously Champ Bailey was the first one to come to mind. I think he would be for every single Broncos fan.
Yeah.
I mean, Steve Atwater, he's the guy that may be working with the safety. Brian Dawkins, maybe working with the safeties. But one guy that really comes to mind now that the relationship between him and the Broncos is kind of on the mend, Al Wilson helping out those linebackers.
Oh,
especially
yeah.
Alexander Johnson. Especially him. I think that he can do wonders working with Alexander Johnson and helping him out and everything like that. I mean, even Josie Jewell, he can help him out so much, just kind of imparting his wisdom because, well, he wasn't the most athletic guy and he did struggle a little bit in coverage. His instincts were amazing and it helped him be a lot better in coverage than what you would look at just with his body type and athleticism and all that stuff. So I think that that's one thing that's plaguing Alexander Johnson. That's a plague on Josey Jewell. I think if he can sit there and work with them, not even on the field, not drills or anything, just work with them in the room, teaching them, educating them about how to pick things up, how to read things. I think that those two players could become maybe not something special in the case of Jewell, but definitely special for Alexander Johnson and a very solid, fine player in the case of Josey Jewell.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Al Wilson would be so awesome to be able to come and watch him and I want to pick his brain, especially with what he said about Alexander Johnson. What was it? Several months ago, he said that he has all-pro potential. He just has to gather the mental aspect of it.
Yep.
And Alexander Johnson came back and said, I want to be an all-pro player. I want to be a Pro Bowl player. And Vic Fangio said, you got to get the mental aspect of it down. If you can get a guy like Al Wilson to come in and show you the ropes and teach you your drops and teach you your drop depth, because the biggest thing that Alexander Johnson really needs to learn, and I think there's something to work with there, is the fact that he is not very good in pass coverage. He does have an interception as well, going back to my third point as like my biggest takeaway from the Broncos camp. Alexander Johnson also has an interception to his name. My goodness, I need to slow down. But to get Al Wilson there and to let him show Alexander Johnson the ropes and teach him the intricacies of understanding what zone coverage is, how to work your hips in man coverage, and also still to continue teaching him how to fill his run fits, gap assignment, and stuff like that. There's still some work that needs to be done there as well with Alexander Johnson, understanding the gaps that he needs to fill in the defensive front. He does a great job as it is because he's got a quick first step, but I want to see what he can do moving backwards. That's the biggest thing for me. Al Wilson would be a huge help for him.
And talking about that, James Campbell, I definitely can see this. I think that Derek Wolfe has a bright future as a coach. Sitting there being able to work with him on the technique and everything. He learned a lot from Bill Kohler and just the other defensive line coaches he's worked with in his career. I think that he really could have a future as a defensive line coach in the future if he wanted to. He would need a good assistant to work a little bit in the film room, breaking things down, because that was one area that he did struggle with the Broncos. But as for the technique and stuff like that, he's got that down. He can teach that he could teach that great. And then we have Robert Skinner, who joined us. He said, "Hello, Broncos country." Hello, Robert. Thank you for joining us. There was a comment earlier that I saw that I really wanted to get into. And let's see here. Let me see if I can't find it.
I'm going to grab this one really fast. Peter Middleton coming in here, and he's asking, is Josh Watson going to get more time now that Todd Davis is out of the lineup, at least for the next week from the sound of it? And yeah, he is. Him and Justin Cernod rotated a lot between the twos. Josey Jewell is going to be the guy that's going to be the beneficiary just because he's the veteran presence on the Broncos linebacker room. But Justin Cernod and Josh Watson, Watson's actually a better run fit for the Broncos defense. But if you're looking for a true coverage linebacker, that's where Cernod's going to get his run. Watson actually does a pretty decent job. But from what I understand, listening to who was it? It was either the DNVR podcast or Broncos Country Tonight. Josh Watson really struggles against tight ends right now, and he is not doing a good job in coverage. Cernod doesn't quite understand the assignment that's asked of him in Vic Fangio's defense. So he's still got a long ways to come, and he's got to grow a lot within the scheme itself. But if you're going to look for two guys to get more time with the Broncos first team defense, it's going to be Josey Jewell because he understands the defense. He's at least a good run fit and can still, though he's not the greatest in pass coverage, he understands what he's supposed to do and can at least hold up to the knowledge part of it. Athletically, he's not going to be able to do so. Watson is not very good in coverage. Cernod is probably a liability in the running game, but you're going to take that pass coverage right now, and that's the more value position. So Josey Jewell being the run fit, Cernod being the pass coverage fit, that's where you're going to find the two guys that are going to benefit the most from Todd Davis being out.
I would say with Watson, too, is you're definitely right with him saying that he has issues in coverage. He did even last preseason, and that's one reason why they actually kind of had him start learning to be an edge and work as a blitzer a little bit more because in coverage, he's just such an issue there. But the coaching staff really likes him. They like the potential that he has. And there is definitely potential for more in coverage. And from conversations I've had, I think that this guy, I think the practice squad is where he's headed this year. But I think after the season, when Todd Davis is a free agency, I don't think Denver brings him back. I think that Josh Watson is going to get a shot to compete to replace Todd Davis in that role. But he's got to develop in coverage because I mean, right now he's worse than Todd Davis ever was.
Yeah. And
Cody Potter, he actually came in. He said, "Any rumor on the Broncos releasing the first depth chart? I haven't heard anything about it. With preseason games, it's hard to judge right now. I think eventually they will, and it might be in the next week. I haven't heard the rumor and when the rumor says exactly, but it's kind of hard to say right now. I mean, it'd be nice to have an idea of where they have things standing, but also preseason or training camp depth charts mean nothing. There's so much time for people to kind of move around and get it. Because last year, who was it? Wasn't last year on the first depth chart? Wasn't Jeff Hireman listed as tight end 1?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just one thing to always consider about with training camp.
Well, and the first depth chart doesn't actually mean anything. It's kind of it's really more of who is getting the first team reps, who's getting the second team reps. It doesn't actually indicate really anything as far as how the roster is going to be constructed. At that particular point, you might have a guy like, let's go back 2 years even, where who was the Broncos starting running back at that particular point when the first depth chart was released?
After 2017, the first number one running back was it wasn't Royce Freeman. It wasn't Philip Lindsay either. It was, I can't remember who it was. But Philip Lindsay was the number 3 on it, and Royce Freeman was number 2. So yeah, big sign. Booker.
Yeah, Devontae Booker. That's
right.
Devontae
Booker was the number 1.
First one. Man, it's easy to forget about Devontae Booker because he really did nothing over the last 4 years of his career in Denver, and now he's actually struggling to find a spot on the Raiders roster. By the way, but like the first depth chart doesn't really indicate what the final roster is going to look like, or what this opening day starting roster is going to like. This opening day starting lineup is going to look like. As we just said, Devontae Booker was number 1 on the Broncos depth chart in 2017 after they just drafted Royce Freeman in the 3rd round, picked up Philip Lindsay, who flashed a lot immediately. He flashed immediately and was getting people were always hyped up about number 2, that number 2 in orange. He's making big flash plays against the 3s. Now he's working against the 2s. They released the first depth chart, and he's the number 3 running back. And then he comes out and rushes for 1,000 yards as the Broncos starting running back. And then he did it again in 2018. So I understand it. And Cody, I appreciate the question. I just want you to kind of take a step back a little bit. The depth chart really, especially in the preseason, means absolutely nothing.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we don't have much time left. We've only got about 7 minutes or so. So this is last call for questions. We got time for 1 or 2 more, depending on how long Lance talks. But no, I mean, we seriously, we got time for 1 or 2 more questions. So go ahead and get them in. Real quick, I did want to answer this. Joel for special teams, but I think we need a player brought in that's better. Thing is, they're not going to find anybody that's better.
No,
I mean, Vontae's perfect. He's probably the only one that may be better. But again, as I said, I don't want to take the risk with his attitude and stuff like that. Him fighting with Vic Fangio and everything. And I like what Joel can do on defense. He is a solid run defender, and I don't disagree, but I don't agree with Lance's about how he's in coverage. I think he did a little bit better last year than a lot of fans give him credit for in coverage. But he is still very limited. I think how Denver wanted to use him wasn't the correct way, based off a player with his skill set. And he's set up to make the roster because he's a special teams player. He came in immediately and made a huge impact on special teams after he was benched last year.
I do want to clarify, just specifically to Josie Jewell in this coverage scheme, he was a lot better than people want to give him credit for. But the thing is, he's so limited athletically, and he doesn't move well.
So is Todd Davis and Alexander Johnson.
But Todd Davis can still open his hips up and turn and run. He may not be the fastest guy in the world. Josie Jewell just doesn't. He doesn't open his hips. He's a straight drop, straightforward kind of defender. He can scrape side to side moving forward, but he doesn't move backwards very well. Todd Davis can at least move backwards well. He may not be the fastest and most athletic guy, but he can still move backwards and work in coverage that way. He's not going to keep up with a Noah Fant or a Travis Kelce coming across the middle of the field. Josie Jewell is not going to be able to move. He'll move forward and cover that route, but then he's going to get outrun. At least Todd Davis can move forward and kind of keep up with the guy. Like the biggest thing is Josie Jewell doesn't move very well backwards. And that's a big thing with Vic Fangio's defense is you have to carry the inside receiver back to that secondary zone and then be able to work laterally. You have to work in two different directions. He's not capable of being that kind of a player. He's just not athletically gifted enough to be able to do so. Justin Strnad, he's going to have to learn how, like, if going to Justin Strnad, just for example, he has the ability to move backwards and then laterally. He's just not fast. So,
Kevin Peterson came in and said Levante Bellamy looks special. I've seen a lot of positive stuff about him, but I've also heard a lot of negative. I've heard that there's been a couple fumbles, a bunch of drops, and that he is a little too patient. He often looks for the big play. He doesn't look to take what's just given sometimes. So I don't want to say he looks special. And don't get me wrong, Levante Bellamy was a running back I've been high on since last year. I discovered him myself in October last year, and immediately I really liked his potential. I thought he should have been drafted, but everything in training camp hasn't been all pretty. Definitely very up and down with that. And then Darian P came in, asked, who's winning the long snapper battle? Lance, go ahead and take a guess, because that's all it is, because nobody talks about long snappers.
We talked about long snappers on the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast a few weeks ago when we did our 53-man breakdown. Honestly, it's Jacob Bobenmeyer is who's taken, at least what I've understood. He's the guy that's out there and taking the bulk of the snaps at the long snapper position. I've only seen one actual mention of it, by the way.
I've seen one mention of it, and the mention that I saw was talking about Wes Farnsworth. So it was just this thing about, and all it really was, it wasn't that like a preference or anything like that. It was just saying that I think it was Sam Martin and Wes Farnsworth were working off to the side a little bit later than normal, than the rest of everybody just getting timing down and stuff like that. So that's all that really was. Maybe it's because he's behind, feels like he's behind and he's got to catch up. Or maybe it's because he thinks he's got a leg up and he just wants to help him cement himself there. Could be either way. We don't really know. And then speaking of long snappers, James Campbell says, do you think the move away from Crater was to get more athletic at the long snapper position? No, I think it was just to get more cheaper. It's a position that, I mean, he was set to make, or he's made, what, $4 million the last 4 years? I can't remember what the deal was.
Yeah.
It was like $1 million a year.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a thing to get cheaper.
Of course, you want to stay cheap at the long snapper position. You're on the field for, let's say you score 3 touchdowns and punt 4 times. You're on the field for 7 snaps a game because you're not playing as a gunner. You're on the field for 7 snaps a game. Why would you want to invest high dollar money, find a rookie that can actually do it and do it at a fairly decent level? Even the blind kid from USC, if you had to have him snap for extra points, like paying $450,000 a year on a rookie minimum contract for 3 years, kick him to the curb and bring in another guy and just restart the process over from there. You don't need much. I mean, don't get me wrong. A quality long snapper is a very good thing to have. James, I know what you're talking about with the guy from Dallas. I can't remember his name. 12 or 13-year starter at long snapper for the Dallas Cowboys. The Raiders actually had a game against the Los Angeles Chargers. Well, they were actually the San Diego Chargers at that point a few years ago, where their long snapper went down and they missed, I think, 3 field goals in that game and had a punt that was almost blocked as well in the same game because they didn't have a long snapper that was actually quality enough to do the job. However, you can stay cheap at the long snapper position because while it is a specialist position, that's all it is. You got one guy that needs to do one thing.
Yeah, and just so you know, the average for a long snapper to play in the season is 120 snaps.
120 snaps.
120 snaps in a season and 16 game season.
Like I said, not even 10 snaps a game.
Yeah. I mean, and Crater was awesome. I mean, it wasn't just what he did as a snapper. It's what he did on coverage units too. I mean, he made a couple big tackles there as well. But, I mean, it's just one place. If that's where you can cut money at, you cut money there. Sucks. It's the worst position to play. outside of maybe running back, because running backs don't matter. I mean, at least long snappers matter. Am I right? Punters matter. Running backs don't.
Yeah, well, neither does Juwan James, according to Charlie Beagle. It's almost as many snaps as Juwan James has played.
Casey Crater last year played over twice as many snaps as Juwan James did. Fun fact. Casey Crater played more than double this. Well, he played 143% more snaps than Bryce Callahan played last year.
Hey. My goodness. All right. Well, guys, I think that's probably going to wrap it up for us here as we go talking trash on some other players and whatnot, and talking about how long snappers don't matter, even though they do. But anyways, guys, thank you all.
I was saying long snappers do matter. Running backs don't. Long snappers matter.
Running backs and first down linebackers only don't matter.
That is true.
All righty, guys. Well, thank you all for watching. I'm going to take this over here. Thank you all for watching the Dove Valley Deep Divers podcast. You guys can follow me and for me at Sanderson MHH on Twitter, and for Erick at Erick Trickel. Notice the CK in Erick. Also follow the show at DVDD_pod. It's the easiest way to keep your fingers on the pulse of what's going on with the Dove Valley Deep Divers. While you're at it, follow at Mile High Huddle. It is the mother account. It's the easiest way to keep your fingers on the pulse of what's going on with all of the podcasts, and also what's going on at milehighhuddle.com. You've got instant news and analysis, film breakdowns, opinion articles like the ranking the AFC West piece that I've got going on. Edge defenders coming here soon. Stuff like that. If you want to know anything about the Broncos, follow at Mile High Huddle. Head on over if you.
Sorry, I still got to say is you got to change the title of that to making Bronco fans angry. Not ranking the AFC West. It's got to be making Bronco fans angry.
Hot take. I really wanted to put Kansas City over Denver in the Edge rankings, but
I talked them out of it, guys.
Anyways, continue on here. Head on over to huddleuppod.com. Get your merch. That's the merch booth. Get yourself a hat. Get yourself a T-shirt. Building the Broncos, Dove Valley Deep Divers, Mile High Insiders, Huddle Up Podcast, Mile High Huddle swag, face masks, hoodies, coffee cups, everything like that. Anything that suits fancy, head over to huddleuppod.com and find that there. And the three easiest things you can do if you're not financially able to do so is subscribe wherever you're watching this podcast, specifically on YouTube. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle, like every video you see, and then share. If you love it, share it. Share it to everybody in Broncos country, and make sure that we get as many eyes on what we're doing here as possible. Now, Erick, I'm kind of disappointed. I really wanted to break down my coverages today. But before we get out of here, any last words?
Yeah, I wanted to apologize, man. I mean, we just took too long getting over training camp, stuff like that. And then once we hit that 30-minute mark, it was just kind of I want you to be able to really dig into it and break it down and everything. And 30 minutes just seemed like things would be a little bit rushed, especially having to fit questions in and everything like that. And I know everybody would absolutely love it. I mean, all the information and stuff like that. So I think that, yeah, we'll definitely work, try to get timing down a little bit earlier with our first conversation, and try to give you a full 50 minutes next week, and do that. And then real quick, so thing I just got here, we're wrapping, as you guys are wrapping up. That's a wonderful thing. You can subscribe on YouTube. Obviously, you're here on YouTube, and you can watch the replay of this. You can download it on iTunes, on Stitcher, and everything like that. For those of you who are not on YouTube, you guys can follow us at Mile High Huddle. As he said, that's where basically every single thing I do has a video attached to it anymore. All the videos get posted up there. So I saw somebody come in and say about doing just do a longer show, proceed. Sad thing is we can't. We are limited at time and everything like that. Just because, I mean, Lance has a baby. I have a little girl. He's got a baby boy, not just a baby. It's a baby boy. But we got families and stuff like that. I mean, as much as we love to be here, we love to spend time with our family as well. And you guys are an extension of our family, but sorry to break this. You guys aren't quite as important as my daughter. But anyways, guys, thank you guys for watching as always, and have a wonderful week.
Yeah.
What are you whispering over there?
I said, ouch, man. And not as well, you're absolutely right. I
was going to say, it's like, geez. Anyways, thank you guys for watching as always. hope you guys have a wonderful week. We'll see you next week. I'm getting ready to go jump on and play a little bit of Apex Legends, Fall Guys, and Warzone with good friend of the podcast, Luke Polglaze.
Yeah.
What are you doing tonight?
I'm probably going to go back and delete this stream. No, I'm just playing.
I did terribly hosting it. Like, it felt so awkward.
As Peter over in Turkey can attest to.
Let's do it properly. Don't worry, I will.
No, but for me, I'm gonna review my notes and everything like that, and work on the edge piece I have coming up. Probably get started on some of the interior defensive line, and also go love on my son, and that's the biggest thing. So, but anyways, guys, next week. I promise you, next week we're doing coverages because I've got a lot of really cool graphics for you guys to check out on the live stream. It's been a lot of work. I borrowed some stuff from Inside the Pylon to kind of give me a baseline to work with, but I've broke down a lot of special stuff for you guys to check out. But anyways, to wrap it up here, my name is Lance Sanderson, signing off for Erick Trickel. You guys stay safe and take care and have a great weekend. We'll see you guys next week.